Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, college football's week 9 has arrived. Well, actually, I guess by the time you are watching or listening to this, it will have arrived. I'm currently recording this on a Sunday night, but we're going to be talking about the Tuesday night slate of college football DFS action for week 9 of the 2024 season. This is Tuesday, October 22nd. We're going to take a look at both games on this slate and break down what you can expect from each game, as well as who you need to be targeting for your DFS lineups on DraftKings, as well as FanDuel for this 2-game slate. Now, I got to come up with a good name for these midweek games, y'all, because, we've got Maction in November. Everybody knows Maction. Everybody loves Maction, right? The Max, kind of the source of the original midweek college football, that they play on Tuesdays and Wednesdays in November. But, in October, we've got Q's action, I guess you could call it, Conference USA action. I need to find a good nickname for it. I've been calling it Q's action. But, we've got 2 Conference USA games here on this slate. We've got 2 more coming on Wednesday night as well. Make sure that you are subscribed to our channel so that way you can be with us for all the rest of your college football DFS content. I can't promise that I'm going to be here for every single midweek slate the rest of the college football season because my busy season is about to start. But I can promise that we're going to get to as many midweek slates as we can get to. I can promise that we are going to have this Saturday, main, and night slates covered as well. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel and you can be with us for the rest of college football season and get all of our weekly golf coverage and weekly NFL coverage and college basketball content once that comes as well. But without further ado, we got 2 games to break down. So let's go ahead and get started. So the one distinguishing feature of this slate to me that kind of identifies it more so than any other is the amount of Q tags that we see at the quarterback position. There is not really very many sure things at all at the quarterback position on this slate. It is going to be one of those slates where we're going to have to wait for news on Monday or Tuesday, or do what I like to do because, a lot of these G5 college football teams don't have the most press coverage, is simply put just an hour before the game starts, start searching the player's name on Twitter, seeing if people are tweeting about their availability, seeing if people are tweeting about them warming up. That's usually the best you can go off of. But even then, it's not an exact science. But with a lot of Q tags on this slate, we've got a lot of thinking that we're going to have to do when we make our lineups. So let's go ahead and start talking about game number 1. It is Sam Houston State heading to Miami to take on Florida International. Sam Houston State is 6.5-point favorites with a game total of 45.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 26-19 in favor of the Bearcats. So you've got an interesting 2 styles between these 2 teams because last week UTEP ran all over FIU and Sam Houston State loves to run. But also last week, Western Kentucky threw it all over Sam Houston State. And FIU, it's kind of yet to be seen if they're going to be able to pass the ball because we don't know what their quarterback situation is going to look like for this game. So on paper, this looks like a matchup where both teams can take advantage of the other's weakness. But will they be able to? That is the question. So for Sam Houston State, their starting quarterback, Hunter Watson, is very questionable for this game. He left in the first half of the game against Western Kentucky. It was an undisclosed injury. Really, I was watching that game, which really, truth be told, I'm going to be really honest with you guys. I don't know how many actual DFS content creators out there actually watch all of the games, but I'm really glued into these midweek college football games. I watch as much of them as I can. Now, I'm not in my room grinding out tape and watching the film and watching every play, but I've got the game on my TV for the entirety that it's on. So I do actually watch these games. And against Western Kentucky, he did leave the game early. It was not clear what injury he had. They didn't say on the broadcast, oh, this is a concussion. Oh, this is that. He really took a hard hit and he was out the rest of the way. So he is very questionable coming into this one, $8,000 salary. Jace Bauer would be the guy that would play if he does not. Bauer is more of a runner than a thrower. We saw him when he was a starter at Central Michigan. He was kind of that way there. He's not a super polished, super accurate passer, but they will be able to still run the ball because he is a runner. Hunter Watson's primarily a runner as well. So what my strategy would be with these 2 guys was if I'm making lineups, I would start them with Watson in and then wait till I get news, make sure to check it before kickoff, and then you can just swap down to Jace Bauer if you need to because there's only 200 salary difference between Watson and Bauer. DraftKings usually does this for us, so it's a very easy swap with all your lineups if you start with Watson and then go down to Bauer. You can't really do it the other way because then you might have already spent that $200 salary. Now at the running back spot, we did see something interesting last game. Last game, DJ McKinney was actually the running back leader in carries for the Sam Houston State team. He had 10 carries, whereas the quote-unquote starting running back Jay Ducker only had 6. That is now 2 straight games where DJ McKinney has out-carried Jay Ducker. The little asterisk that I may put on that, though, is that both of those last 2 games have been blowouts. Neither of them have been competitive. So I don't really know if that's the best thing to go by. But what I can tell you is both of these running backs, Ducker and McKinney, are going to see plenty of carries in this game. And then John Gentry is a wild card that can be kind of thrown into this equation. He was apparently warming up before the game against Western Kentucky. He did not actually play in it. So this is a guy that was one of the best backs for them last season. He appeared to be their RB1 week 1 against Rice. I don't know if they would kind of ease him back into it and give him just a little bit of carries, or if they would try to thrust him right back into the RB1 role, or if they're just comfortable with Gentry and McKinney, playing in that role. So I don't really know what would happen with Gentry. But I know if you're making enough lineups, this is a team with one of the highest rush rates in the country. They're going to be running the ball with these 3 guys, especially if Bauer is, the starting quarterback as opposed to Watson. And I also think that this is FIU's weakness defensively is the run defense. So I think this is a really good spot for Ducker and McKinney especially. But I think if you're playing enough lineups, if we get word that Gentry's out there, I think he is worth a look in GPPs. At the wide receiver spot, look, this is a team that does not throw the ball all that much and does not throw the ball all that well. Quavez Humphreys has some random big plays and random big games. That's about all I have to say about that. Ife Day was their wide receiver 1 2 years ago when they were at the FCS level. Hasn't really had a great transition into FBS football, though, and it has just kind of been middling in terms of his production this season. But he is a very often player for this team. I wouldn't say every snap player, but he does play quite a bit. The really interesting thing with this team is that Noah Smith was their primary playmaker on offense last season. He was quite good. They would get him the ball in all kinds of different ways. He was kind of like a Conference USA Deebo Samuel. And he put up all kinds of numbers last year. Has not had that to start this season. And then, oh, by the way, he did not play against Western Kentucky. We do not know the severity or the duration of his injury. So he might be back for this game. He might not be. But what is interesting is that Simeon Evans came in and immediately played in the Noah Smith role, caught 5 passes for 59 yards and a touchdown in that game. So if we get word that Noah Smith is out again, I think Simeon Evans is a great play. And then also at $3,000 minimum salary, we've got Michael Phoenix, who has actually scored touchdowns in back-to-back games. He is not like an every down player for them. He's not a player with super consistent production, but scoring touchdowns in back-to-back games, maybe there's something there, and maybe he's a guy that you can just hope can just score a random touchdown. And at his salary, $3,000, if he scores one, he'll surely pay off good value for that salary. Now let's talk about the FIU side. So the Panthers, I think they're the Panthers, right? I should know this. When I was at Charlotte, we played FIU like every year. Anyway, Keon Jenkins was the starting quarterback, and he's decent. Like, he's got a little bit of rushing upside. He can throw it around a little bit. He's not the most aggressive, most polished quarterback in the world, but he's all right. $7,000 is a decent salary for him. Here's the problem. He left last game against New Mexico State early. And then his backup came in, Amari Jones, and then he got hurt and left that game early. And then Hayden Carlson came in, and Hayden Carlson did not look all that great. He came in, was 4 for 6 with 2 interceptions. But we don't know the status of the injuries of Jenkins and Jones. And so if both of them are out, then Carlson would be the presumed starter. And really, like I said, you really want to attack the Sam Houston State defense by the air. That is how Western Kentucky got him last week. So whoever's starting a quarterback, obviously I would prefer Jenkins, should have a chance to have some good success against this defense. I would have the same strategy with the FIU guys that I had with, the Sam Houston State guys, where I'm starting my lineups with Jenkins. And if I have to, global swap it to Jones or Carlson, then I can do so because he is the most salary. Now, also, it's worth noting, I'm recording this on a Sunday night. So, by the time that, it's lineup making time on Tuesday, maybe these Q tags are gone and maybe we know who the starting quarterback is. But because I'm recording this early, we don't exactly know yet. But let it be known, I think that whoever starts for Sam Houston and whoever starts for FIU are probably my top 2 quarterback plays on the slate, just being honest. At the running back spot, you know what the best friend of a backup quarterback is? A strong run game. And so if one of the backups is starting, why would we not see a ton of carries for this backfield? And the backs are way too cheap on DraftKings. Kajan Owens is their guy. He is $4,000. In the last 2 games, he's had 15 and 9 carries. He's had double-digit fantasy points in 4 games so far this season at a salary of $4,000. That'll do it for us, and I really think he's a great value play at the running back position. Lexington Joseph is the RB2. He's had 7 and 8 carries in the last 2 games. To me, that's like – it's very clearly like a 60-40-ish split between Owens and Joseph, but Joseph is going to get that 40. He is used when he's in the game. He's used as a pass catcher as well. He's caught 4 passes over the last 2 games. And he's only $3,200. So, like, in terms of salary savers at the running back position, I don't think it gets much better than Owens and Joseph. There's one we're going to talk about a little bit later, but those 2 guys are your cheap running backs that you can go to for this slate. At the wide receiver position, the good news with FIU is that no matter who's going to be playing quarterback, they throw to 3 guys. All right. It's Rivers, it's Patterson, and it's Burris. Each of the last 2 games, those 2 have been the 3 leaders in receiving. Eric Rivers is their best one. He is the most experienced one. He was kind of coming on strong at the end of last season as one of their better receivers, and he's been great so far this season. Ever since week 1 against Indiana, he's been over double-digit fantasy points in every single game. He scored over 20 fantasy points in 3 games, and he's got 4 touchdowns on the year. He just consistently catches, 4 to 7 passes, consistently gets around 100 yards. He's one of the top wide receiver plays on the slate, and I don't really think that there's any up for debate about that. Dean Patterson is next on the list. He's pretty solid. He's slightly less consistent than Eric Rivers, but he is a pretty solid option. Normally sees pretty steady volume. Only caught 1 pass last game against UTEP. Is there something there with the fact that it was the backup quarterbacks and they couldn't get the ball to Dean Patterson? Maybe, but I still think Patterson's absolutely in play at 5,300. And then Burris is a super cheap receiving option who's been super involved the last 2 weeks. 3 catches against Liberty, 7 catches against UTEP. And they're getting him design touches as well. He ran the ball last week 1 time for 15 yards. So I think these 3 FIU receivers make for really solid plays, whether you're playing cash game, GPP, whatever. They're really effective cost per dollar plays. FIU is projected to be the lowest scoring team of the slate at 19 points. But the good news is that more so than any other team on the slate, we know where those 19 points are going to come from. They only play 2 backs. They only throw to 3 wide receivers. And I'm going to be getting plenty of exposure to these FIU players. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then let's talk about game number 2. Now, I do want to mention, if you do want more information from me, there are places that you can get it. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. I also record these shows well in advance. So if you're looking for my opinions closer to lock, feel free to reach out on Twitter. I'm more than happy to share them with you. I'm also in the Fantasy Corner Discord. Link is in the description. Fantasy Corner Discord is a great community of a bunch of really good, really smart people who play DFS for a lot of different sports. College football is one of them. If you're looking for people to kind of help you keep track of injuries and monitor stuff like that, Fantasy Corner Discord is a great place for that. We've got a lot of people and a lot of manpower and a lot of guys in there who know how to find injury statuses and are pretty good at figuring it out. And so, if you're looking for just that information, it's a great place to go, but it's honestly just the best community to be a part of if you're looking for people to talk about DFS with. Also, if you want to know who actually makes my lineups, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. I publish my DFS score for every single college football DFS slate, including these midweek ones, with thoughts on why they are my core plays, not just the list of plays, but why in terms of an X's and O's perspective, a game theory perspective. And I do think that I provide a very well-researched, thought-out core every single time. It can help you get better at college football DFS by doing so. All right, let's go ahead and continue on with game number 2, UTEP at Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech is currently 7.5-point favorites with a game total of 50.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 29 to 22 in favor of Louisiana Tech. On the UTEP side, Skylar Locklear got the start last game as Cade McConnell was hurt, and he was okay. Like 16 DraftKings points, 14 for 23, 161 yards, touchdown and a pick. He's okay. Like I don't think he has a super high ceiling, but he's startable, right? Cade McConnell is priced the exact same on DraftKings. McConnell beat out Locklear. So obviously this team thinks more highly of McConnell than they do Locklear, but if McConnell plays, I think McConnell's slightly better, but like, I don't know, whoever plays, whoever gets the start, they're probably option 4 at quarterback on this slate, in my opinion. At the running back position, we had an interesting situation last week. So Ezel Jolly had not been healthy until the game against Sam Houston, or the start of conference play, in which he immediately burst on the scene, 17 carries. Western Kentucky, he was certified workhorse status, 27 carries, scored 19 DraftKings points. Against Florida International last week, it was starting that way. He had 9 carries, but then he lost a fumble, and they didn't play him at all after that. So the question is how deep is the doghouse of UTEP's coach? Because if Ezel Jolly is still in the doghouse, he's not going to be getting a lot of run in this game. If it's a very quick doghouse, though, he could absolutely go back to being the workhorse back that he has been. When Jolly went to the doghouse, Javon Jackson took full advantage, 26 carries, 148 yards, and a touchdown, and a receiving touchdown for 33 DraftKings points in that game. He was great. So the question is even if Jolly's not in the doghouse anymore, did Jackson kind of earn more of a share of the carries than he had been getting? I don't know. Like, this is an interesting situation. I don't really know how to handicap it. I think given the choice between the two of them, I think more people on DraftKings are going to play Jackson because he's cheaper, because they saw what happened in the last game. So he's going to be more highly owned. But if Jolly goes right back to being the workhorse, Jolly's the guy that you want, because Jackson was a total non-factor in the 2 games that Jolly was a workhorse. This is probably the most hardest to handicap situation on the slate from the running back position, but there's also a ton of upside, because if one of these guys is the workhorse, then you're going to get a ton of carries, because clearly in the game where Locklear was at quarterback, they wanted to run the football, and they were able to run the football. At the wide receiver spot, there is good news on the UTEP side. They are pretty condensed in terms of their targets and their receiving production. So Kenny Odom is a little bit of a high risk play in my opinion, but he's been successful. He's had 11 DraftKings points in every game that he started. He just is very big play dependent. He's had a catch of over 40 yards in every game that he started. So, he's got some upside, but he's got some risk. I think he's more of a GPP type of play than a cash game type of play. Cam Thomas had been this offense's guy up until recent weeks. He got a ton of design touches, tons of carries out of the backfield, jet sweeps, screens, stuff like that, where they're just trying to get the ball in his hands. And he was like the guy who never broke off big plays. And in recent games, he hasn't been as featured, hasn't been as successful, but he is still going to see some guaranteed volume and at a salary of $5,800. Personally, I would rather play the likes of Rivers or Patterson, but I do think that Thomas is worth a look at $5,800 because he's going to touch the football. And then all the way down at $3,000, we got Trey Goodman, who has been very solid for this team in recent weeks. He's caught at least 3 passes in the last 5 games. Against Western Kentucky, 5 for 41. Against FIU, 4 for 25. He is too involved to be only $3,000. He is going to be a very popular punt play on this slate. And I got to be honest, when you start lineup building for this slate, if you just play a guy like Goodman, you've got pretty much unlimited salary to do the rest of what you want with your lineup. On the Louisiana Tech side, this is not a situation where we got to wonder about who the quarterback is. We got one where we know who the starter is going to be. It's going to be Evan Bullock. He's a young guy who started the last 3 games. Varying amounts of success. He lit up Middle Tennessee for 36 DraftKings points. Last week against New Mexico State, Louisiana Tech did have a ton of success scoring. They scored 33 points. They threw the ball a ton, 41 attempts, but he only turned it into 14.4 DraftKings points. He's not exactly an efficient player if he's only scoring that many DraftKings points on that many passing attempts. So personally, I would rather play Sam Houston starter, whoever it is. I would rather play FIU starter, whoever it is. But if you don't want to wait for injury news, if you just want to set your lineup and forget it, Evan Bullock has got to be your guy, and I definitely think he's a viable play here on this slate. He would be my 3rd quarterback ahead of whoever starts for UTEP. At the running back spot, this is interesting. So we kind of joked in recent weeks how they went with like a 25-25-25 committee, and it's gotten a little better, but not a lot better. So Drew Davenport is the highest priced running back on DraftKings. He was a part of that committee, and he missed the last game against New Mexico State. No idea the status of his injury. I have no idea if he's going to play or not. That'd be something to monitor up until tip. Marquise Crosby was one of the starters last year. He did not get a carry at all against New Mexico State. So just take that for what it's worth. What happened against New Mexico State was Fred Robertson down here at $3,100 on DraftKings, a decent 7 carries for 29 yards. We also had Amani Evans, decent 10 carries for 57 yards. So he's starting to get more and more involved. But Amiri Wiggins was the guy. He is starting to emerge as the 1A in this committee. He had 13 carries against New Mexico State, was able to score a touchdown, targeted twice in the passing game as well, 15 DraftKings points, which followed 21 DraftKings points against Middle Tennessee State. I think if you want to roster any one running back, it's going to be Amiri Wiggins. But like I said, this is a small slate where if you're playing a lot of lineups, you can sprinkle in these other backs. My preference would be Wiggins 1, Givens 2, Robertson 3, based off of recent usage, but that is not factoring in the fact that Davenport might be back, and I have no idea if Davenport is going to be back. At the wide receiver spot, Louisiana Tech does claim the top wide receiver option on the entire slate to me. It is True Edwards. He is the wide receiver 1 for this slate. He is the wide receiver 1 for this team. He's had 3 games this season over 27 DraftKings points. He has a massive target share. Evan Bullock has gone to him early and often. In each game that Evan Bullock has played, Edwards has caught at least 6 passes. So I'm really going to be banking on him as my top wide receiver option on this slate. After him, it's just, oh boy, like it's really, really ugly. Like, I'd be fine not playing any of them if you want to make that argument for me. If you want to make an argument for him, Jimmy Holiday, I do believe he's a Western Kentucky transfer, but don't quote me on that. Saw 4 catches last week. He's been regularly involved in the 3 starts that Evan Bullock has had. Maryland Jackson is their second leading wide receiver on the season. He did have only 1 fantasy point against New Mexico State, though, one of just like a dud in that regard. Eli Finley is also quite regularly involved in the offense. 2-3 catches every single week. Not a whole lot of upside. Solo Lewis just had a random decent game against Middle Tennessee, followed it up with not doing much at all against New Mexico State. And then Hunter Tipton against New Mexico State, he actually caught a pass, but now he is also entering the transfer portal. So don't play him. But, he was a guy who did catch a pass last week when you look at the box score. So really, after Edwards, you don't have to play any of those guys if you don't want to, if I'm being totally honest. All right, but that's going to do it for this slate, y'all. Hopefully gave you guys plenty of information that you can use to build some winning DFS lineups for this slate. Like I said, a lot of Q tags on this slate, so make sure you were staying in tune to the injury news. Like I said, the best advice I can give, there's no magical secret sauce or secret sources or anything like that, unless you're going to physically go to the stadium and watch warm-ups for a guy in a certain number. The best thing you can do is go on to Twitter 30 minutes to an hour before game time, type in the guy's name that you're wondering about, and see if anybody's tweeting about him. That's honestly the best advice I can give you on that. And it's free. It's entirely free to do that. So that would be my advice on that. But like I said, it's Sunday night here, so hopefully we get a little bit of clarity on some of these guys before the Tuesday night kickoff. But that is going to do it for this episode, y'all. Like I said, hopefully gave you guys all the information that you need to build some winning DFS lineups. If you guys got any usefulness out of this video or audio, if you're listening that way, please hit the like button. Please rate and review the audio. Helps me out a ton when you guys do that. But that's going to do it for this episode. Make sure you stay subscribed. That way you can be with us for all of the other college football DFS slates that we're going to talk about. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Best of luck to you guys on this midweek Q's Action slate, and I will see you guys next time.